Hello, web design students. Let's get into our example website. So here's where we left off. We have some navigation items here, our about section here, picture, and some more text, headings. Now let's go into our code. And just to remind you what the mockup looks like. So here, now I don't want it to be the entire width of the page, so let's call this 80% of the page. So we can make the body a width of 80%. You can also accomplish this by putting everything into another div and making that div 80%. But let's just do the body for now. And it's also centered, so before I do anything else, let's try margin, something called 0 auto. Now, this doesn't always work, or sometimes you need margin auto, 0 auto, and more stuff. But since we don't have a lot of stuff in our site at the moment, this should work to center the content. So if you go back to our browser, refresh. All right, cool. It centered it, and it made it all fit inside a width of 80%. So you see there's 10% here and 10% here. So that's good. Let's go back to our code sum. Back to my index, and I also have my name in the navigation. So instead of putting it inside the main navigation here, I want to try putting it outside of the unordered list here by just sticking it right here at the edge. I don't have a link yet, so let's put that. But I have my name, so I'll put that here. Save this back to my site, refresh, 1, 2, 3, refresh, and there's my name there. So eventually, I will get rid of these bullet points, move them up into here so that they're all in one line, and then change the background because the mockup has a black background with white text. Eventually, I will change this to black background with white text, but let's skip that for now, come back to it later. What else do I have? So I want to add a couple more photos here. Go with this and this. And I want to add headers because we just talked about headers in the previous video. So let's go to our code. Let's get down to projects. So we have a section. All of this is the section. And then we have an image, and then we have a heading of H3 and some text and a link. I want to put all of this into a header. Actually, I just want to have the heading in a header. So what does that look like? Looks like this. Header and header closing tag. So my header will contain the H3. Now I can style this if I want, but right now I will just keep it like this, just so it tells the browser that the heading of this section is here. The content will be here and here, so this image. So let me demonstrate this in a sketch. So this is what I've created. I've got my section, and then my image is here. My header is here, which includes the H3. And then next, I have a paragraph and a link. So this is my section. My header goes over here with the text here, and then to the left will be the image. So let's go back to our code. So this won't change how it looks, even if I add this header to the code. So real quick, I'll show you this. Shouldn't change anything down here. So 3, 2, 1, refresh. Doesn't change. That's okay. We don't want it to change the look. We haven't styled it yet. So I also want to add photos to this. So let's do that next. To add an image, we do source equals. Now here it's an IMG folder, and this one's called Spark PNG. it's always a good idea to add alt text for people that are visually impaired. Pick up. It's always good to add alt text for screen readers. Let's add our heading to this one as well, because if you're using hex sections, you should use headers. And then let's go down to the whale section, add our image. Whoops. Source, whale, img, whale, png, alt text, whale, add our header. So let's refresh this. Let's see what our pictures look like. Picture's huge. This is way huge, size of a whale. So we'll fix this coming up in our code. It's back to our code. Let's pick that right now. So right now we have sections, we have images, but in our style, we don't do anything with them yet. So let's add some style. Let's say we want to shrink down the pictures. So there are multiple ways to do it, but the way that makes sense to me, and let's go back to our whiteboard, is to put a new div around the image. And when we do that, we can control the height and width of the div, margin, padding, all of that. And then we can make the image fit into this div size. So if I draw a new div around it, that div, we can add some style to it and make the image fit inside of it. So let's go back to our code. To our HTML. Let's go to the tiger group here. I'm going to put this into a div. Called class tiger cover, and make sure that the image is included inside that div. Okay. Then we can go into style, and for tiger cover, maybe we want the width to be 40%. So if we save this, our index is saved. If we go back to our browser, refresh, 1, 2, 3, refresh, nothing happens yet, but I'll show you now that we'll add one more thing of code, and then this will become 40% of the width of the browser. So pick up. We'll add one more piece of code, and then this will take up 40%. So back to our code. Now, here's how, pay attention here. Tiger cover. Now we want to target the image inside of the tiger cover. So we use that with a right arrow, oops, a right arrow, and then img. So this says to the browser, go look in the tiger cover div or the tiger cover class, and any images inside that, I want you to make it width 100, because I want the image to take up the entire width of the tiger cover div. So if we save this, go back to our browser, we should see this, I think, expand. 1, 2, 3, refresh. And now the picture expands because it takes up 40% of the container that it's in. So I've already made this 80% of the entire width of the browser. Now I've asked it to be 40% of that 80%. So roughly this size here. And then we can do the same for all of these other photos just by adding a class around them, or adding a div around them. So if we go back to our index, go down to Spark, add a new div class, let's call this Spark group, Spark cover, sorry. And then end the div right after the image. Save this. While we're here, let's do the whale div class whale cover. And then on our style, we want to do the same thing. For now, we'll just do each individual one, Spark cover with 40%. I like how that looked. And then Spark cover IMGs inside Spark cover with 100%. So again, we want the width of the image to take up the whole size of the div that it's inside of. Same thing with whale. Whoops, let's get the head. Just whale cover, 40%. And then whale cover IMG with 100%. So now we go back to our browser. We still have these huge pictures, but using that code we just put in, we should be able to corral this into a more manageable size. So 1, 2, 3, refresh. Now this fits into nicely here, and my whale picture fits nicely into here. Oops. So now that we have our pictures wrangled, we can start to float them up to here so that this text, header, H3, paragraph, link, goes up here where it belongs. So let's go back to our code. Actually, let's go back to our whiteboard. So we want this image and the div inside of it to be side by side with the text that goes on this side. So remember from last week, this is done through floating. Back to our browser here. Back to our code. And so that tiger cover div, we want the text underneath it to be floated up to it. So we want the picture to be on the left. So we do float left. And since we have our group still in here from last week, then that'll break the floating, and then our clear fix will kick in and then push all the other text underneath it, underneath the picture. So if we go back to our browser and have a look, 3, 2, 1, sorry, false alarm. This text should float up to here once we refreshed. So 3, 2, 1, refresh, and there it is. So it's floated left, the text is here, and then this picture did not float up here because our break is here. Again, there's the break. Whoops, here's the break. So that the stuff underneath the tiger picture does not float up to here. It's broken up properly. Now in my mock-up, I have Spark on this side. So how do we do that? We go back to our code. We want Spark cover to go to the right. So we can do float right. Save this. Check to make sure that we have a break under a spark. Yep. So after the link goes here, part of the code, we've got a break with class group. Our clear fix is still intact. We refresh our browser, 3, 2, 1. Hey, now we've got this picture on the right, this text floated this way. So this moves over, this moves up, and now we have our nice, except we're going to float this one. Getting closer to our mockup. Now, back to our code, find that last one, whale cover. This one is float left. And now we should have 3, 2, 1, all our pieces in place the way we're supposed to have them. Now, this doesn't look so good. We don't want it to be right up there. That's really tight to read, hard for us to look at that. So we can go back to our code. Go to tiger cover, maybe here. Padding right. We can start with 5% pixel or 5%. See what that looks like. Add padding right of 5% to tiger cover. Whoops. 3, 2, 1, refresh. It's not bad, not bad. Our mock-up has maybe a little more space. So we can play with this number later, but this is basically how you get this to move over some. You could use margin too, but padding also works. Like I said here, you could also have done margin right. And maybe margin right's better, but in either case, you get the same effect. So let's stick with margin right. Let's do the same for here. Spark cover, maybe because that was on the left side, we'll do margin left, 5%, and then whale cover, margin right, 5%. And now back to our browser, we refresh 3, 2, 1. Now we got a little more space in between. We'll have to add more space underneath, but we can do that later. But now we have a little bit better. Let's start cleaning up some other things. Then we can actually get into the responsive web design parts of the week. So we can get rid of this border and this box shadow. So back into the code in our CSS for about, get rid of this border. Maybe I'll just comment it out. Remember, highlight, command, slash, or control slash. I don't want this box shadow anymore. I don't want this margin actually either. So let's just get rid of that. So if we save this back to our browser, 3, 2, 1. Now it takes up the whole space in between the 80%. And then that'll be important when we get to our responsive web design stuff. So now let's clean up this navigation. Let's get it a little closer to our mockup, which looks like this. Back into code. Just to remind you what it looks like, I have navigation. Inside that, I got a link for my name, and that will go on the top left. And then an unordered list here with our 3 links, which are composed of a list item and the A. And that's for each of them. So let's go about styling this up. In our CSS, let's start, put down to the bottom. So our new stuff. Nav, first of all. Background color, black. Color of the text is white. Let's go back to our browser, refresh, So, okay, we didn't quite make it to be white color, so we'll have to fix that. But we want, oops, background color black so far. Start with that. Back to the browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now we have a black background, that's good. Have to clean up these links here. So let's go back to our code. Actually, stop here. So now let's work on this navigation. Right now we've got my link here and then an unordered list. It's supposed to be black background, white text. So let's start to build that back in our code. Let's get rid of the bullet points. So get rid of the bullet points of this list. Go into our code. UL for unordered list. And then to get rid of those bullet points, we want to get to the list style type. Right now they're disks. So we want to get rid of disks and make that none. So if we save this, back to our browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh, number of bullet points, so that's good. Next thing we want to do is get them all on one line. So we can do that first by going back to UL here and doing display inline block, like we talked about before. Save this, back to our browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now at least they're side by side now, my name and link here and these guys. So now we need to have these line up like a display inline block. So to do that, we can go here because we want this to be display inline block 2 and might as well make this list style type none, comma, li, and that way both of these get both of these. UL and li both get list style type none and display inline block. So if we save this back into our browser, these should now line up after I refresh. 3, 2, 1, refresh, and now they line up properly. So that's good. We're getting there. We're getting there. Next thing we may want to do is spread them out a little bit. So we can go into our code, start a new line just for the LIs, or pick up. Go back to our browser, add it into here, padding left, maybe 5% say, and then padding right, another 5%. So if you save this and refresh, then these should spread out some more. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Ooh, they did spread out, but they kind of got smushed together. They got into another line here. So we'll have to fix that. Let's go back to our code. That UL needs a little bit of room, so I'll just start at its own line. Give it a width, say of 75%, say. We can experiment with this number, but let's spread out the unordered list. Back to our browser, 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now we've got a little more room for this. This looks a lot better. The next thing we want to do is change the color of those links, of all these links. So we could just do A, but that would reflect all of the links that we have in the text, and we don't want to do that. So we want to be very specific about which links get which color, because we have links here that are going to go on top of white, but these links are going to be on top of black, so we'll have to change some of the way we do the style for this. So in our code, instead of A, we want to be very specific, just like we did up here. So here we'll do li right arrow A. And in that LI arrow A, color white, refresh our browser, 3, 2, 1. Now our links that are part of the list items turned white. So that worked. Can't see them, but I know they're there because we can mouse over them. And then we can change our navigation to be background color black. And then we should have the white links of the list items show up. 3, 2, 1, refresh. So that's good. So we're getting there, getting there. Now my link here on the left is still not white, so we can change that. The same way we did this one, the same way we'll do the navigation link. So nav arrow A, color white. Save this. 3, 2, 1, refresh. Now this is white, just like these three over here. And one more thing, I don't think it needs to be this close to the edge. So let's add a little padding back in code here. Padding left, let's call it 2%. We've been doing 5%. Let's do 5%. Save this, refresh our browser again. Now we got a little more room here. So we can play around with the number of padding percent that goes there, but this is how this works. Now we can really get into some responsive web design.